Welcome everyone here today to 2022. Great to have everyone hiding behind their masks. This was something different. So we'll declare the meeting open at 4 o'clock. Disclaimer, agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item in the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respect to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Burgoyne. Item 3, declaration of members and officers' personal interest. Are there any interests at all? Nil? Item 4, deputations. Nil? Okay, item 5, officers' reports. So item 5.1, Chief Executive Officer. Item number 5.1.1, delegation 1.1.8, Shire of Harvey Rec Grounds camping. Any questions? Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wondered if we're going to have camping at the Harvey Rec Grounds, is there any chance of that occurring at Brunswick as well? And could we incorporate it into this? Is that everyone? All of them?
Can I pass through to the Governance Compliance Officer who is responsible for the delegation?
I would need to double check that with Liz, the manager of governance, about this, to double check that we can add that into it. And see if it's feasible. Also, I'll take that one notice if that's okay.
Yep. Right. Thank you.
I believe it already happens at Brunswick. Yeah.
Yes, it does. I just need to check through the council policy, the recreation grounds camping, to see whether that's expressly written through there, so we can do that and get back to you, Councillor Bromman.
Thank you.
Any other queries or questions, councillors? Okay. Item 5.3.1, Local Planning Scheme number 2, endorsement for consent to advertise. Manager of Planning Services, would you like to give an overview of this, Mr. Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, councillors, obviously the preparation of this document has been some time in the making. There's been a series of workshops and council was provided a copy of this document some time back. There may be some just quick reminders that the document in its preparation has been referred out to state government agencies and the EPA and the Department of Planning. So the document that we have now for consent to advertising can still be modified through the advertising process should we think there needs to be some fine tuning. It's not necessarily the place or the time to do it now, because this is the document that has been seen by the state agencies. So they're expecting this particular document to be advertised. There are some areas within the document that we know at officer level should be modified, and we have committed to doing so. Freshwater Lakes is one of those, whereby there was a scheme amendment that was in place to try and remove the short stay accommodation component to it, and what was holding that up was the effectiveness of the on-site effluent disposal system. That has been resolved. It doesn't seem appropriate that that document that was in its draft form submitted by the committee is running parallel to the scheme, so we will embrace that and modify our scheme accordingly. There's some rural tourism accommodation components that aren't expressly contained within this document to the level that we would like, and we need to modify those through the advertising process to reflect the tourism strategy and the implementation plan that's been adopted. The other one is for Binning Up South. The scheme provisions that currently appear in our scheme have been carried forward word for word, and they reaffirm and provide a very high level, in our opinion, protection for the nature of development that can occur through South Binning Up, sorry. But we do know that there are members of the community that would like some tighter provisions in that area, and through the advertising process we are more than willing to engage with them to provide a high degree of certainty that addresses some of their concerns. We're not able to go to the full extent to prohibit or lock down development going forward. That is not the function of the town planning scheme, but it should provide a high level of security going forward. That is currently what they're seeking at the moment. So beyond that, as mentioned previously, the scheme will become a more contemporary scheme, consistent with the model scheme text, and consistent with all the workshop outcomes that we've had over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping that we don't have too many queries about it tonight, but happy to take any questions on it, but look forward to getting this document to advertising and engaging with specific landowners should they have any issues through that advertising period.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Bromley?
I think given the context of our conversation earlier on, a lot of these things have been taken offline, so to speak. I just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, just talking a little bit about the shed wall height 3.5 metres was passed by council when I was on council last time, and yeah, it's not reflected in the document. So I wondered why that was the case since it's been passed through council.
Okay, so provisions such as that is actually more appropriately dealt with by policies. So it's council policy as opposed to scheme provisions, and that is why it doesn't appear in the town planning scheme. It's a policy of council.
Okay, thank you. And,
similarly with the 120 square metre sheds.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. And I suppose one of my concerns about our codes, and I don't know how we address this, so that's why I'm asking the question, is in relation, there was a program on the ABC the other night about talking about heat sinks in relation to the way we're developing subdivisions. And it's obvious from that presentation that we need to be developing green spaces as well and tree areas so that we reduce the amount of heat being cooled through parking areas and those types of stuff. I wondered how we're going to address that given the R-code policy and the space that's now being provided on the size of building blocks and so on.
Through Mr. Chairman, as we discussed at the last meeting, the R codes are a statewide document of which have recently introduced provisions for the need for revegetating streetscapes and also in private properties as well. The other components to the state planning framework is livable neighbourhoods, which provides for the design and functioning of open space, and they've also gone down to the type of hierarchy of public open space and what's been provided in this. Again, the town planning scheme is not really the appropriate mechanism for controlling those. They are a suite of policies and initiatives that the council brings through, and they're driven by a lot of the feedback through all our place plans, through our work that community development do, and it's also other policies of council that our public health plan that we're preparing. It can go into recommendations in terms of heat sinks, walkability, shade. So there's a whole suite of documents that need to be prepared and endorsed by council that would give us a very strong background to actually ask for a particular subdivision design or standard over and above what the livable neighbourhoods and ARCOs ask for. So that's something that we're not... we have a significant conscience for it, and we are in the process of probably putting things in place to bring those forward into sort of contemporary design packages for council suite of policies.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm just seeking clarification. Where it's excavation and filling of land, does that include dams, like what we see up at Mile where they just seem to, dams just seem to be appearing? Is that included in that explanation?
Dams have been a very difficult one to put into any planning pigeonhole. Mm-hmm. Some local authorities say it's development and therefore needs an approval. They only form development if they're actually building a dam wall, because it's actually a structural wall that requires engineering certification to actually be constructed across a creek line. We have an opinion that yes, they need to be issued an approval, development approval, and we have done so in the past. It's also questionable as to whether they're in a surface catchment area, drinking catchment area. So there's quite a number of other areas, and there's also licensing requirements through DUA for the Yarragadee and the Leederville in terms of whether they're going to be just extracting surface water or whether they're going to be actually sinking bores and pumps down as well to feed those dams. So it's quite a complex array of different approvals that are required. That we wouldn't use that cut and fill of 1.5 metres in terms of, I think that's what you're referring to. We wouldn't use that provision in regard to dams. We would actually use the development side of things. So asking for a development application.
Any other questions, councillors?
Just through the chair, in terms of Councillor Bronwyn, infrastructure services are currently looking at a street grid policy at the moment, and obviously if you plant a tree, it has to be watered, it has to be looked after, so it needs to be resourced. There's whole areas, in the new areas, where there's no village streets. So there's a whole space that we're missing in action at the moment in terms of a proactive approach to green our suburbs. But obviously there's a cost implication there, and obviously, you know, if council wants to go down that track, we can provide sort of costs and what resources we need. But we are working on the street tree policy at the moment to get this, you know, peak island effect and all that sort of stuff. But obviously, greening streets improves, you know, value and amenity and walkability and all that stuff. But every time you plant something, you have to maintain it, you have to water it. So if you don't, it's just a wasted investment.
Yeah, look, thanks for that. I appreciate that comment. I understand the financial costs in relation to it, and also there's the ongoing cost to people's health and the climate and all types of things in the future too. So, thanks very much.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, item 5.4.2, listing of accounts paid December 2021. Financial statements. Sorry, question 5.4.1, financial statements as at 31st December 2021. Do you have questions you have questions on this one, Councillor Leach? No? No questions, did Ms. Winter? Any questions at all? Any queries? Okay, item 5.4.2, listing of accounts paid December 2021. And Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I did send the list through to Mr. Winter, and I didn't bring my list with me, but he's quite happy to read and provide the answers.
So on page 100, and starting with page 163, the first EFT that's queried is EFT 58097, Earth to Ocean, thermal cameras, and what were they being used for? The account is for 8 thermal cameras that the brigade used to check if there's any hot spots after a fire, and it also includes mobile repeaters for their mobile phones. So there's 8 of those as well. So about $10,000 for the mobile phone repeaters and $6,000 for 8 thermal cameras. The next one is on page 165, EFT 58153, landscaping with Sandpoint, nearly $63,000. And the question is which estate? So this is verge beautification at Grand Entrance and Paris Road, as well as Harvey Information Bay Uduck Road, and irrigation repairs to Kingston and also Treendale. The next one is EFT 58226 on page 166, Sandpoint, and same question, which estate? This is for the regular landscape maintenance that we have with the contract. It's their November account, and it includes Galway Green, Treendale, Kingston and Lakewood Shores. The next one is Knowledge 1, EFT 58304, and it's which project are we providing the professional and technical services for. Knowledge 1 is the software that we use for our records management system, and we're making changes there, so that was to do with that. The next one is 58310 on page 168, legal advice, and the question is what does it relate to? So there's 3 areas in here. There's the Binningup Golf Course, SAT review with Carboni Brothers, and there was also Public Works and Extractive Industry Licence advice that we sought from McLeod's. The next one is on page 171 from McLeod's, and again, what's that relate to? And that's the Binningup Golf Course. The next one is on page 172, and it's EFT 58451, Sandpoint, and again, which estate? So this relates to Galway Green, Treendale Landscaping, Kingston, Lakewood Shores, and then also some work on Ridley Place maintenance, Central Wood Reserve, Treendale Reserve and Harvey Rec Grounds. The difference between this one and the other one of theirs, this is their December account and the other one was the November account. So the contract we have with them is about 1.2 million, so you would expect monthly accounts of about 100,000 for them, so it's pretty normal what we're seeing here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr. Winter. When it said escape landscaping, I was thinking of a estate, not of various amounts, so hence the queries, but appreciate the work for that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor? 5.4.2. All good? Okay. 5.5, community and lifestyle. 5.5.1, terms and reference, community precincts reference groups. Any questions or any queries, councillors? Councillor Beach.
I've just got one that came to mind this afternoon when we were discussing this. I noticed on each of them, and have no problems with the makeup of the committees, 2 councillors, which is fine. Do you see, or whoever's running this, Director of Community Lifestyle, do we see a need for a deputy councillor or councillor in a deputy position?
And over to Director of Community and Lifestyle.
I'm not sure how many meetings you're going to have.
Well, actually, just to clarify, it is a project running out of the CEO's office, and we're providing project support for the consultation. And also, in response to your question, all the other advisory groups do have a deputy council, so if that's your request, we can include that.
No, just raise the point whether we do need one.
Councillor Jackson.
On that point, I felt that perhaps the Shire President would sit on both of those committees, so that would mean that the diversity of councillors on there might be very limited, that I would like to see 3 councillors and a deputy. So I guess the question is that will that be something that could be put into the draft, or do you require a motion at the next meeting?
Will require an amendment to be made to the makeup of the community reference groups, and we're guided by council as to the numbers of councillors and obviously who nominates for those working reference groups.
Any other questions? Councillor Campbell?
Oh, mine's not a question, but I agree with Councillor Jackson that these are significant projects, and I would like to see more presence of councillors on these. So I was erring towards the Shire President being on both, plus at least 2 councillors, which would make 3. Oh, and I'm happy to move a motion at the next meeting to that effect.
And a deputy.
Amendment, sorry, deputy.
So therefore, could this officer's recommendation be amended for the agenda rather than an amendment being put at the council meeting?
What we have is, once the agenda is set and comes to agenda briefing, it's not amended. So unless we put up, sorry, the word escapes me.
An alternative?
No, amendment. No, it's not an amendment. It's addendum. Apologies. We could put up an addendum in regards to this, which might make it easier, seeing that we've got so many changes. But normally we would not change the agenda, and it would need to be an amendment of council. But yeah, quite happy to do an addendum.
Yeah, good.
Any other further questions? Okay. Moving on to item 6, notice of motion for the following meeting. Nil. Item 7, matters behind closed doors, is nil. Item 8 is closure of the meeting, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 4:24. Thank you everyone for their attendance.